Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we explore the extraordinary within the everyday. Today, we bring you the inspiring tale of Marcus, a waiter whose act of bravery unknowingly changed a family's life forever, sparking a transformation in his own. Stay with us for a story of courage, gratitude, and redemption. The Copper Fork was alive with its usual Friday night buzz. Marcus Williams expertly navigated the restaurant's labyrinth of tables, balancing trays and offering warm smiles. It was a dance he had perfected over the past 3 years, though it wasn't the career he had envisioned. With a bachelor's degree in business administration, Marcus had dreamt of corporate success, but the realities of a tough job market had landed him here, wearing a crisp white shirt and bow tie, serving affluent diners in downtown Chicago. Growing up on the South Side, Marcus had learned resilience from his parents. His father, a construction worker, and his mother, a nurse, had instilled in him the importance of hard work and empathy. They didn't have much, but what they lacked in material wealth, they made up for in love and support. Those values stayed with Marcus, guiding him even as he felt stuck in a job that didn't reflect his ambitions. On this particular evening, the restaurant hummed with the clinking of glasses and the low murmur of conversations. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, his mind preoccupied with the routine of the night. As he approached his section, he noticed a woman in a wheelchair being seated at one of his tables. She was in her mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that crinkled slightly when she smiled. There was something about her presence, calm yet compelling, that caught his attention. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Copper Fork," Marcus said warmly as he approached her table. "My name is Marcus, and I'll be your server tonight. May I start you off with something to drink?" The woman looked up, her gaze meeting his with an intensity that momentarily unsettled him. For a fleeting moment, he thought there was recognition in her eyes, but it passed so quickly he convinced himself he was imagining it. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I'd love a glass of white wine. Please, whatever you recommend." Marcus nodded, retreating to fetch her drink while feeling a curious sense of anticipation. Something about her felt different, though he couldn't quite place it. When he returned with a glass of crisp Chardonnay, she was absent-mindedly tracing the pattern of the tablecloth. "Have you decided on your meal? Or would you like a few more minutes?" he asked, setting the glass in front of her. "I think I'm ready," she said, smiling. "I'll have the pan-seared scallops." Then, as Marcus prepared to note her order, she added, "Marcus, would you mind joining me for a moment? I have something I'd like to discuss with you." The request was so unusual it gave him pause. It wasn't standard practice for a server to sit with a customer, but something in her tone intrigued him. After glancing around to ensure his other tables were settled, he agreed, pulling out a chair and sitting opposite her. "I want to thank you for your service tonight," the woman began, leaning forward slightly, her eyes never leaving his face. "But more than that, I want to thank you for something you did a long time ago, something you probably don't even remember." Marcus frowned in confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't understand. Have we met before?" She shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "No, Marcus, we've never met. But 5 years ago, you changed my life forever." Marcus sat frozen in his seat, unsure how to respond. The woman's tone was calm, but carried an emotional weight that unsettled him. She reached into her purse, her movements deliberate, and withdrew a carefully folded piece of paper. Slowly, she unfolded it, smoothing it out on the table with trembling hands. "I've kept this for years," she said softly, sliding the paper toward him. It was a newspaper clipping, the yellowing edges hinting at its age. The headline read, "Local hero saves woman from burning car." Beneath it was a grainy photograph of a young man, his face smudged with soot, helping paramedics load someone into an ambulance. Marcus's heart stopped as the memory surged back with startling clarity. The screeching of tires, the acrid smell of burning rubber, the heat of the flames licking at his skin. He had been walking home late from a study session at the library when he witnessed the accident. A car smashed into a lamppost, flames spreading quickly. Without a second thought, he had sprinted toward the vehicle, pulling the unconscious driver out moments before the car exploded. It had been over in minutes, the chaos fading into a blur as paramedics took over. He had given a statement to the police and gone home, trying to scrub away the soot and the memory alike. "Yes," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "That's me." The woman's eyes glistened with tears as she nodded. "I thought so. The woman you saved that night was my daughter, Emily." Marcus felt the world tilt beneath him. The memory of the accident had haunted him for weeks, but he had never known what became of the driver. Hearing her name now made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Emily," he repeated, the name foreign but heavy on his tongue. Is she okay?" "She's alive," the woman said, her voice breaking slightly as she wiped away a tear. "She suffered severe injuries in the crash, spinal damage that left her paralyzed from the waist down. But she's alive, thanks to you. And more than that, she's thriving." Emily is a motivational speaker now, sharing her story of survival and resilience. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat, rendering him momentarily speechless. He had often wondered what impact his actions that night might have had, but he had never imagined this. I don't know what to say," he finally managed, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm just glad I was there. You did more than just help." "Marcus," the woman said, her tone steady but deeply emotional. "You gave my daughter a second chance at life, and in doing so, you changed the trajectory of our entire family." "My name is Linda Thompson," she added, extending her hand across the table. Marcus shook her hand, feeling the weight of her gratitude in her grip. "It's an honor to meet you, Linda," he said, his voice thick with humility. Linda's gaze softened. "I've been searching for you for years. Emily wanted to thank you personally, but the police report only listed you as a good Samaritan. No contact information. It wasn't until last week, when my husband and I were dining here, that I recognized you from the photo in this article." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "Of all the places, I can't believe you found me here. The universe has a way of bringing people together when it's time," Linda replied, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "And Marcus, I think you needed to hear this just as much as we needed to say it." As the weight of Linda's words sank in, Marcus felt a whirlwind of emotions. Pride in his actions, humility in the face of such profound gratitude, and an unexpected sense of purpose began to stir within him. For years, he had gone through the motions of life, feeling like he was drifting without direction. Now, hearing about the impact of his bravery, he felt a spark reignite, a reminder of who he was at his core. "Linda," he said, his voice firm but laced with emotion, "thank you for sharing this with me. I never knew. I never imagined that my actions that night could have had such far-reaching consequences." Linda reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "That's the thing about acts of kindness, Marcus. We rarely see the full extent of the ripples we create. But trust me, those ripples can change lives." Marcus nodded, her words settling deep in his heart. "I'd like to meet Emily," he said suddenly, surprising even himself with the intensity of the desire. "If it's okay with her." "Of course. I'd love to hear her story." Linda's face lit up. "Oh, Marcus, she would love that. In fact, she's giving a speech at a local community center next week. Would you like to come?" "I'd be honored," Marcus replied without hesitation. As he stood to return to his duties, Marcus felt a shift within himself. A weight he hadn't realized he was carrying seemed to lift, replaced by a newfound clarity. For the first time in years, he felt connected to something larger than himself. What he thought had been a fleeting moment of bravery had transformed into something far greater. And now, it was leading him toward a purpose he had long forgotten. The days leading up to Emily's speech were filled with anticipation for Marcus. Though his shifts at the Copper Fork remained as busy as ever, his thoughts often wandered to Linda's words and the newspaper clippings she had shown him. He couldn't shake the image of his younger self, standing amidst the chaos of that fiery night, soot-streaked and overwhelmed. At the time, it had felt like an instinctual act, something anyone would have done. But hearing Linda describe the ripple effects of that moment had stirred something deep within him. After his shifts, Marcus found himself diving into Emily's story. He searched for videos of her speeches online, listening to her recount her journey from tragedy to triumph. Emily spoke with grace and power, her wheelchair never detracting from the commanding presence she brought to the stage. She detailed her struggles, the pain of her injuries, the despair of losing her mobility, and the determination that pulled her through it all. Her words were raw and honest, but they carried an undercurrent of hope that Marcus found profoundly moving. "She calls me her guardian angel," Marcus murmured to himself one evening, watching a clip where Emily credited an anonymous stranger for saving her life. The weight of her gratitude humbled him, but it also planted a question in his mind. Why had he let his life stagnate? Why had he allowed himself to drift through his days, settling for less than he was capable of? The night of Emily's speech arrived, and Marcus sat quietly in the back row of the community center auditorium. The room buzzed with energy as people filled the seats, but Marcus was focused entirely on the stage. When Emily wheeled into view, a wave of emotion hit him. Her smile was radiant, her presence magnetic. The audience fell silent as she began to speak. "Life doesn't always go the way we plan," Emily began, her voice steady and confident. "5 years ago, I was in a car crash that changed everything. I lost the use of my legs, but I gained something far greater, an appreciation for the resilience of the human spirit." She shared her story with remarkable vulnerability, detailing the challenges she had faced in rehabilitation, the moments of despair, and the glimmers of hope that carried her through. Her words painted a vivid picture of a woman who refused to let her circumstances define her, who chose to fight for a life filled with meaning and purpose. "And I owe my life to someone I've never met," Emily said, her voice softening. "A stranger who risked everything to pull me from that burning car. I call him my guardian angel because his bravery gave me a second chance." The room erupted in applause, but Marcus sat frozen, overwhelmed by the emotion of her words. He had often doubted whether his actions that night had mattered, but now he saw their impact in full clarity. Emily wasn't just alive, she was thriving, inspiring others to overcome their own challenges. After the speech, Linda approached Marcus with a wide smile. "Come with me," she said, gesturing toward Emily, who was surrounded by a crowd of admirers. When Linda introduced them, Emily's eyes filled with tears as she reached for Marcus's hands. "You're him, aren't you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You're the one who saved me." Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Emily's gratitude poured forth in words and tears as she thanked him over and over. "You gave me a second chance at life," she said, "and I've tried to make the most of it every day since." The connection between them was instant, built on a shared moment of bravery and survival. As they talked, Marcus felt a shift within himself. Emily's resilience, her ability to turn tragedy into a force for good, inspired him deeply. She made his own struggles, his feelings of being stuck, his fear of pursuing his dreams, seem small in comparison. That night, as Marcus walked home under the city's glow, he made a decision. He could no longer live a life of complacency, ignoring the fire within him that had once driven him to save a life without hesitation. He owed it to himself, and to the memory of that night, to embrace the courage that had defined him in that moment. He didn't know exactly what his next steps would be, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose lighting his path forward. The morning after Emily's speech, Marcus felt different. The weight of his ordinary routine, the uniform, the endless orders, the artificial smiles, pressed heavier on him than it ever had. Yet beneath the drudgery, a spark had ignited. Emily's story, her gratitude, and her resilience had awakened something in him, a call he couldn't ignore. That afternoon, Marcus walked into the Copper Fork with his resignation letter in hand. His manager, a sharp-tongued but fair woman named Karen, looked at him in disbelief as he handed it over. "Marcus," she said, leaning back in her chair, "you're one of our best. What's going on?" "I've been stuck here for too long," Marcus replied honestly. It's time for me to do something that makes me feel alive again." Karen regarded him with a mixture of disappointment and respect. "Well," she said after a pause, "I hope you find whatever you're looking for." Marcus left the restaurant feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. He had no job lined up, only a vague notion of what he wanted to do next. But for the first time in years, he felt a sense of direction. That evening, he opened his laptop and searched for programs related to firefighting, a career that had always fascinated him but seemed out of reach. Over the next few days, Marcus researched, called local fire stations, and even attended an open house event for prospective recruits. The path wasn't easy. The training would be grueling, the pay modest, and the risks high, but something about it felt right. As he filled out the application for a firefighter training program, he thought of Emily and the fire he had braved to save her. If he could do it once, he could do it again, and this time, he could make it his life's work. The challenges came swiftly. The training was physically demanding in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. Every muscle ached after hours of drills, running with heavy gear, and practicing rescue techniques. Financially, he struggled to make ends meet, juggling part-time gigs while dedicating most of his time to the program. But every time doubt crept in, he thought of Emily and the profound gratitude in her voice. It gave him the strength to push forward. One afternoon, Marcus met Tom, a grizzled veteran firefighter who became his mentor. Tom had a no-nonsense attitude, but a sharp eye for potential. "You've got the heart for this job, kid," he said after a particularly grueling training session. "But heart's not enough. You need skill, strategy, and the guts to face the worst situations imaginable." Under Tom's guidance, Marcus began to excel. He studied fire behavior, practiced emergency medical procedures, and learned how to think under pressure. The camaraderie he found with his fellow recruits reminded him of the bonds he'd seen among firefighters on TV as a kid, a team that felt more like family. Meanwhile, Marcus remained close to Emily and Linda. He attended more of Emily's speeches, finding inspiration in her words each time. Emily, in turn, encouraged Marcus in his journey, incorporating his story into her talks as an example of how one person's courage can ripple through countless lives. One day, while volunteering at a youth center, Marcus met Jamal, a shy 10-year-old who reminded him of himself as a child. Jamal, curious about Marcus's training, asked hesitantly, "Do you think I could be a firefighter one day?" Marcus knelt down, meeting the boy's eyes. "Absolutely," he said with conviction. "It takes hard work and dedication, but if you believe in yourself, you can do anything." In that moment, Marcus realized how far he had come. He was no longer just chasing his own dreams. He was inspiring others to believe in theirs. Jamal's shy smile stayed with him as he returned to his training, more determined than ever. As Marcus approached the final phase of the firefighter program, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The ripple Emily and Linda had spoken of was real, spreading not just through their lives, but through his own and the community around him. Each step forward strengthened his resolve, proving that courage, no matter how small, could transform not just a moment, but a lifetime. The day of Marcus's final firefighter examination arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. He had spent months training tirelessly, pushing his body and mind to their limits. As he stood among his fellow recruits, the weight of the journey that had brought him here settled over him. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was the culmination of his transformation, a chance to prove to himself that he had reclaimed the bravery that had defined him that fateful night years ago. The instructors led the group to the training ground, where a towering structure had been set ablaze to simulate a real rescue scenario. Thick smoke billowed into the sky, and the heat was palpable even from a distance. Marcus donned his gear, the weight of the equipment familiar but heavy. He adjusted his mask, tightening the straps as Tom approached. "You ready for this, kid?" Tom asked, his gruff voice tinged with encouragement. Marcus nodded, his eyes steady. "I've been ready." Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "Then show me what you're made of." When the signal was given, Marcus charged into the smoke-filled building, his senses heightened. The roar of the flames was deafening, and the heat pressed against him like a physical force. Visibility was near zero, but his training took over. He moved methodically, scanning each room for signs of life. His heart raced as he found the training dummy meant to represent a trapped victim. Carefully, he secured it and began the arduous task of maneuvering it through the maze of fire and debris. Emerging from the building, Marcus's chest heaved with exertion, but his grip on the dummy never faltered. The crowd of instructors and recruits erupted into cheers as he crossed the finish line, his determination evident in every step. Tom approached, a rare smile breaking through his stern demeanor. "You did it, Williams," he said, his tone proud. "You've got what it takes." Marcus removed his helmet, the weight of his accomplishment washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt whole. Later that evening, Marcus joined his family and friends to celebrate. Linda and Emily were there, their smiles reflecting their pride. As the group gathered around a small fire pit in his parents' backyard, Emily raised a glass. "To Marcus," she said, her voice full of emotion, "for reminding us all that courage and kindness can change lives." The group toasted, their laughter mingling with the crackle of the fire. Marcus looked around, his heart full as he realized how far he had come, not just in his career, but in rediscovering himself. He thought of Jamal, who had recently told him he wanted to be just like Mr. Marcus, and of the community programs he planned to start, using his experiences to inspire others. In the months that followed, Marcus threw himself into his new role with unwavering passion. He joined a firehouse in his neighborhood, becoming part of a team that felt like family. He also continued volunteering at the youth center, teaching fire safety and mentoring kids like Jamal. Each day brought new challenges, but Marcus faced them with a sense of purpose that had been reignited by Emily and Linda's gratitude. The ripple effect of his actions continued to expand. Emily's speeches now included a segment about Marcus, the stranger who had changed her life and, in turn, inspired countless others. Marcus often attended her events, standing quietly in the back as she shared their story. It humbled him to see how his bravery had touched so many lives. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift at the firehouse, Marcus found himself sitting on the roof of the station, gazing at the Chicago skyline. The city lights glittered like stars, and for the first time, he felt at peace. He thought about that night 5 years ago, when he had acted on instinct to save a life. At the time, he hadn't realized the depth of his impact. Now, he understood that even the smallest acts of courage could create ripples that stretched far beyond the moment. As the cool night air surrounded him, Marcus smiled to himself. He had found his purpose, his calling, and his community. The road ahead would still hold challenges, but he was ready for them. He had faced the flames before, and he would face them again, not just for himself, but for everyone who looked to him as a symbol of hope and strength. And in his heart, Marcus knew that his journey was just beginning. Thank you for watching this powerful story on Empathy Stories. Marcus's journey reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can ripple outward, touching countless lives in ways we may never imagine. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to join us for more heartfelt tales. Until next time, take care and keep spreading empathy.